Okay, so here we go. This is an episode after my heart. Again, I am an orthopreneur junkie, and we have Dr. Justin Saliman on, who is a serial entrepreneur. His orthopedic surgery is almost a side hustle, but he is a world's expert on meniscal repair, and he designed from ground up a super cool meniscal repair device. And he was doing this right after fellowship and putting his own money in the arduous process. He talks about his successes and his failures, and then he talks about his new company, OutcomeMD. And yes, of course, he's also dating Sofia Vergara. So I'll tell you, it's a fun episode. I really enjoyed this one a lot. There's a lot to learn for those that are out there that are thinking about coming up with new ideas on their own. You're definitely going to want to listen to this one. Dr. Scott Sigman, hashtag follow the fro.
From medical media, this is The Ortho Show.
Hello, world. Dr. Scott Sigman, your favorite opioid-sparing orthopedic surgeon, here for another episode of the Ortho Show podcast, where everyone knows we bring you the best of the best. Now, everyone also knows that I'm a big fan of orthopreneurship. I'm an orthopreneur junkie, and we have an awesome guest today. We're going to talk about his a really remarkable success story in orthopedic entrepreneurship, and that's Dr. Justin Saliman, who's an orthopedic surgeon, specializes in sports medicine. He's in private practice at the Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, and he is a serial entrepreneur. And Justin, what a pleasure it is to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. So look, we always start at the beginning. We want to know, where did you grow up? What's this whole doctor thing? Were there other doctors in the family? Did you have a choice to become a doctor? Did your parents tell you had to? Where did it all start for you?
I grew up in Denver, and my dad said, "Look, you can go anywhere you want for college as long as it's University of Colorado at Boulder." It was in-state tuition. I had two brothers at the same time, but I went there and it was terrific. But I wasn't sure if I wanted to do business or medicine. I'd always done entrepreneurial things as a kid, like all sorts of things that could take up the podcast. But so I wasn't sure if I wanted to do business or medicine. So I did an economics degree and a biology degree, and then went into the MD MBA program in med school. And I ended up dropping the MBA year because I didn't think it was important to entrepreneurship. And when I look back, I'm not totally sure if that's true. Maybe it would have been a valuable year. But that's kind of where it started. And I remember being torn between, I got early acceptance into med school, and I also got an incredible job offer in business. Um, and I was torn, but it wasn't a hard decision because ultimately I was thinking to myself, look, when I'm on my deathbed, I want to be able to look back and feel like I helped people and made a difference in lives. And sometimes I think in business, you can get stuck in the business of helping people make money, and that's less fulfilling, right? Obviously, there's a lot of important things to do with your time, but what could be more important than health?
Yeah, well, I mean, it turns out that you were able to accomplish both, and we'll get there as we get going. And I find it interesting, the MBA thing. More often than not, a lot of people go early for their MBA, but it seems to me like the people that have been most pleased with their MBA are the ones that have sort of had a career and then gone back and really sort of honed it to sort of really work on maybe a project or starting a new company, et cetera. But how about Solomon Wilcots? Was Solomon there with you at University of Colorado Boulder at the time?
I
He's
don't,
a Solomon was an NFL player. He's a good friend of mine. He's an ESPN analyst as well. So he's a huge fan of University of Colorado Buffalo, especially with your new football coach that's out there right now too. But so interesting. So med school drew you in. You weren't sure going back and forth, but you'd get through medical school, and then at one point or another, how was it orthopedics? Where did the light go off that that's what you wanted to do for a career?
it's just, first of all, it's the most fun specialty you can possibly go into. I mean, I love working with my hands. I did woodwork with my dad growing up and always built things. And it's just always been a hobby. And it's almost like you can do your hobby for work. Not to mention the patients do great typically, right? You're sort of putting them back to function. They're not dying on you. You are making an impact on their lives. And the tools that were coming out right as I was finishing up medical school and looking into orthopedics, it became, instead of like pins and plaster and not much you can do, to like using the coolest things to put the body back together, right? One after another innovation. Orthopedics really ignited my fire for wanting to innovate in medicine.
You're absolutely right. It was a revolutionary, innovative time in the early 2000s. We had been scoping knees for a while. We were getting into the shoulder now. There was new techniques coming out in the arthroplasty world for shoulder. So it was a really exploding time for technology in orthopedics. There's no question about it. So yeah, there's no question. I mean, orthopedics, we are the coolest of the all specialties. And then obviously sports medicine subspecialty is by far the coolest. We know that. But so you decide it's going to be orthopedics, which is great, and you're going to come all the way across, and you're going to head to New York City. And so the St. Luke's Roosevelt program, was that part of the Columbia program as well, or was that part of so how was that? How did that play out at the time?
At the time, it was part of Columbia, and one hospital's up at 114th in Amsterdam near the undergrad, and the other one's at Columbus Circle, which is where John Lennon was brought when he was shot. Not a
Mm.
great claim to fame since he died, but and I get there in 2001. And the first month I'm there, I'm on the 10th floor of Roosevelt Hospital, and someone says, "Hey, look out the window, the World Trade Center's on fire." And
Oh, jeez.
as I'm watching the second plane hits, right?
Amazing.
Then they crumble. We watch the first one crumble. We put on backpacks and IVs and saline bottles rather, and we ride our bikes, myself and two other residents, and we started digging for bodies. And all the first responders had run into the building, and like the firehouse that's across the street from the ground zero, they ran in. They all died. So there was a deserted firehouse. We just set up ladders and hung IV bags to irrigate firemen's eyes. We were handing cinder blocks in a line to dig for bodies. You'd hear cops shooting their guns, and we would listen for where the gunshots were and dig there because that was somebody alive, right? So you knew
Mm.
where to dig. But it was a crazy first month experience of being a doctor, sifting through literally 2 minutes after the buildings crumbled, we were down there.
That's remarkable. I did not know that part of the story, and that is still just incredible memories to this. I mean, we all remember where we were at the time when it was happening, but to be there, actually on scene, really, what an incredible experience for you. I'm sure that has probably haunted you for some time. All right, so at that point, let's get back into the orthopedic thing. Now, where was Bill Levine at this time? What was Bill doing? Had Bill made it back to Columbia yet at this point?
Yeah, I don't remember, and I don't know.
Yeah,
They were like separate programs, but together. It was
got it.
like a weird thing. Like all the medical students were from Columbia, but the residency was separate. Like their residency and our residency were two separate things. And now it's part of Mount Sinai. So it's sort
It's
of this lost program that's glomming onto these other programs.
Yeah, I mean that's the New York City thing, though. There's been a lot of that transition of programs as it goes, for sure. But I'm sure it was an outstanding time. And so you decided to do a fellowship in sports medicine, and was that driven through your residency, or was that just at that point you were like this sort of innovative, hands-on, arthroscopic, minimally invasive type stuff? You were tinkering at that point still, with your other things. So was that the draw?
Yeah, best toys, best lifestyle.
Okay,
And
fair.
that's really what it came down to.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair analysis, for sure. I love it. So you're out to Stanford. You're going to crisscross the country at this point. You're flying over home in Denver, and you're heading out to Stanford. That must have been an amazing experience for you.
Yeah, I mean, you go from Manhattan, which is so fun. Like, what a great place to spend that phase and that age of life,
Sure.
in the best part of the city. Like, it was so fun. And then Palo Alto is pretty sleepy,
Yeah.
but fellowship was great. And what I did was I kept a journal all through residency and fellowship, and all the things I'm like, are you serious that that's how we do it? And like all the things that looked ridiculous to me, I just wrote down, and I knew that I was going to go solve my favorites of those problems, right? Like the first thing that was like, the first day as a med student, you have to transfer a patient. You just grab two sides of a sheet and lift them over, but some of it just seems crazy, right? Like there's no more sophisticated way to transfer a patient than that. And the answer is no, there's not. But I'm not sure that you need to innovate to solve that problem because it's not a big enough problem. But anyway, I digress.
No, it's that this is classic entrepreneurship where you're actually identifying a problem and then you want to come up with a solution, whether you have to develop it yourself or whether you're innovating with other people, which we'll get to. So yeah, so you had this journal, you're keeping about all these thoughts and ideas and things that you want to potentially make better. And you're out at Stanford, and then how did you get to LA? I mean, that's not exactly an easy transition. Very few jobs open up in Los Angeles for orthopedic sports medicine docs. That's got to be an interesting story.
My last year of residency in New York, and I'm in the Hamptons, and I meet a girl who lives in LA who's an actress. And she's there with like Lindsay Lohan, and she's shooting a movie, and we date long distance New York to LA, and then I already had the fellowship lined up when I met her, so I didn't want to not do it. So we dated long distance Palo Alto to LA for a year. And then I worked every connection I could to get a job in LA. It was not easy, you're right. But I was able to network to this guy named Willie Bryan, who ran the show at Cedars-Sinai at the time. And he took really good care of me and brought me in. And I was private because I had this intellectual property for starting Soterix, um, which was tricky because you're private. So I'm not faculty, I'm not getting paid by Cedars. And that means that for 6 months, I'm going to have to get on the insurances and make no money. So, and you don't realize that. So then you get out and like, there's no way to make money for the first 6 months.
Well, hopefully your actress girlfriend was employed at the time. That might have helped.
She said, look, it's fine if you want to move in with me because you have no money, but you need to put a ring on it. So we had never lived in the same city for 2 years, and I had no choice. And I was interested in it, but I wasn't necessarily immediately going to. Anyway, we got divorced after 9.5 years of marriage. But and
So,
two wonderful kids, and that's not a bad story. But
good. Well, that's all right. I'm glad to hear that the kids are great and things are good. You got Beyonce, you put a ring on it, and you got an apartment, and then of course, that's how life rolls. Sometimes life is a journey. But you wind up at Cedars-Sinai, which is a really amazing place to practice medicine. I did my fellowship at Curl and Job. I mean, I know the Smog guys super well, Bert Mandelbaum, Remy Modaber. These are all your colleagues. Now you guys are all together, which is so weird. It went apart and together, and now you're together again. Although maybe you're not. Like I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff going on over there. The Los Angeles orthopedic sports crowd is always a little challenging for sure.
Bert,
But
Bert Mandelbaum had dated, was engaged to, I believe, to my ex-wife's aunt. So I met with him. He was like, "Oh, we're too busy.
yep,
Like
yep.
anyone else," because I think he takes his own fellows. And then who was the USC doc? Taboni.
Yeah,
Taboni,
Jim Taboni. Yep, for Curl and Job too. Sure, sure.
ex-wife's father played in the NFL for 8 years and was really, and then he played for the LA Express at the end of his career. And when he played for the LA Express, he became really good friends with Taboni. He used to take care of the kids in their house and whatever. And so I met with Taboni, and he's like, "Yeah, no jobs." LA was
That's LA, man.
and it still was hard to get in. Yeah.
That's LA in a nutshell. Well, we're going to stick with the actress theme for later on because there is a continued actress theme going on for you, but we'll leave it for the moment. I want to talk about, you're in private practice, you're at Cedars, but early on, right away, in your first in practice, you already have, intellectual property and ideas for developing a new meniscal repair device. And your CV is really quite remarkable. I mean, I've looked at a lot of CVs for the Ortho Show, and it's like, okay, where were you born? What was your education? What research have you done? What's your jobs? And then for you, you've got like 150 patents listed on your CV, which I could honestly say I've never seen to that degree before. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, the first thing I made was actually a shoulder device, and it sends the needle sends a little shuttle back and forth, so you can sew back and forth for rotator cuff repairs. The weak link is the tissue suture interface. We lace up Achilles and then let him walk on it with a heel wedge, right? But we can never really lace up a rotator cuff because it's really hard to pass the stitches, right? Back and forth. So this was like allowing you to do baseball stitches, and I was really excited about it. Stryker did an option period to give me a great deal, and they put in $1 million in 6 months, and they were supposed to sign the option on it. And the day they were supposed to sign the option fell in March of 2008. The markets crashed, they pulled out. So then I had spun off that thing called the Suture Pro, which sends it back and forth. And like, well, could this work in the meniscus? Right. And so I started both companies. I had the Suture Pro Technologies and Advanced Meniscus Technologies. Then those were brought together when the VCs came in.
All right. So I want to talk about the whole entrepreneurship story because I think you took the arduous path, which is very unusual. The vast majority of orthopedic surgeons, when they come up with a new idea or a new solution, they usually partner with industry. There's like a royalty agreement. A lot of people work together, but at the end of the day, you become a very small part of the process. But you took a very different pathway. You decided early on that you were going to own this thing. You were going to develop it. You were going to go down to the basement. You were going to tinker with this thing. You had to bring in some engineers along the way, and then you're going to go hire a lawyer, right? And you're going to keep your intellectual property. You're going to file patents. You're going to own those patents. And then you're going to develop this product, and then you're going to, make it to something that you can eventually exit and sell, which is not the typical pathway.
Yeah, but I'm always overly ambitious. Hopefully not overly, but so listen, I had bought a place in med school for $30,000 that I had tucked away, and I sold it for 80. Okay, so I took that money and I bought a place in New York when I started residency, right at Columbus Circle. And the Time Warner Center, what it is now, it was the Coliseum when I started, and by the time I was done, it was the Time Warner Center. So I made some money right there off of selling that place. I took that money when I finished fellowship, and I waited to file all the patents and everything until I was out of fellowship because Stanford takes like 70% of your IP, right? So
Ugh.
nothing, I didn't hire any engineer. They didn't put anything on paper, but it was other than my journal, but I didn't really do anything until the day I finished fellowship. I filed a bunch of patents and I hired mechanical engineers and I dumped $500,000 into the idea. And if you think, and I consult for many orthopedic surgeons will call me up and say, hey, I've got this idea. How do I get it started? And I'm like, first, and I explain, no one wants to put the money in. And if you're
Yeah.
risk averse, you can't be an entrepreneur. You have to, and the doctors by nature are probably risk averse. We like, that if you do this, this, and this, you're going to end up there, which is going to pay you this much money. And you don't really have to think about it. Just take the tests, do well, progress through, and you'll be a doctor and you'll make some money. And that's it, right? Risk averse. A lot.
That is the vast majority of orthopedic surgeons are risk averse. So I get it, but this is pretty unique. I mean, you're 32 years of age. You're finishing your fellowship. You've been able to sort of leapfrog these investments. To even have 500 grand to invest in something at the end of your fellowship was really amazing. And then obviously to have the courage. Innovation requires courage because there will be just as much failure as there will be success. And the key is to keep moving forwards, to continue, overcoming those failures and then identifying hopefully a good team around you and then progressing, right? So so there you go. And now you're in private practice. You're living with your actress wife to be.
So I'm $500,000. I put the money I had, and then I put in another 500,000 I didn't have.
Yes.
I
Okay.
didn't know how to.
Friends and family, Angel, where did it come from?
I just like was literally IOUs. Okay,
Okay.
and I was falling into debt.
Yep.
Uh, and then I joined private into practice and don't make money for 6 months. So it was scary. And Stryker was going to save my ass with this thing, and then in March it fell apart, right? 2008. So then I had a very hard couple of years trying to get things together. But I fortunately came across, well, when I was in fellowship, Josh Mackauer, just the greatest guy you've ever met, if you've met him. He has an incubator in the Bay Area called ExploreMed. He was head of Stanford Biodesign for a long period of time. He started Acclarent, which is balloon sinuplasty. Johnson & Johnson bought it for $830 million. He has an incredible urology company that was acquired. He started Corvin, the wine mosquito that goes and takes one glass of wine out and exchanges argon gas into the bottle. He started all this cool stuff. He comes to me and he's like, I have an idea for a way to unload the medial compartment of the knee. Do you think it would work? And it's a drawing, right? And he's like, I want a fellow who I can bounce ideas off. And I found him because he found me because I was looking for engineers. So one of the engineers is like, hey, let me introduce you to Josh because Josh is looking for orthopedists to bounce this thing off. Anyway, we become very close friends. I'm like, look, this makes sense because you could use a cane in the opposite hand. We know that feels better. Unloader braces make it feel better. Yeah, I think if you could do it, it would be amazing. And what do you know? He starts MoxyMed. I fly 1 week before my wedding to
How long ago was that?
Australia.
MoxyMed, it's just getting approved right now. It's just commercialized.
So in 2008, 1 week before my wedding, which her family was pissed, I fly to Australia to do first in man and help the Australian surgeons do first in man with the first versions of the implant. It was called the Kinespring at the time. And now MoxyMed got FDA approval in April, and I've done a bunch of them. It's an incredible surgery. So innovative. Like really good job to those guys. And Anton was the first, he was the CTO at the time. And then Kevin Sidow was the CEO. Kevin Sidow joins my board. Josh Mackauer helps me get in front of the VCs. So you need help sometimes.
Yep.
And when the VCs came in, they're like, well, we want the shoulder device, but we also want the meniscus device. We want it all, everything you have. We'll put in $8 million. We'll
How much
get
equity did you give up? What'd you have to give up?
50% of the company or something, I think, for $8 million.
50%.
And they
Okay.
gave 500,000. I was in debt back. Okay.
Okay. So
It's
you
not,
cleared your books, you gave up 50% of your equity, and now you got $8 million in cash in the bank.
and they say, however, you can't be the CEO. We need to hire someone. So we bring in, they do a search, they find a CEO. We differ on the vision a little bit. This Novostitch has no neurovascular risk. The needle never penetrates towards the artery or nerve. It's repairing the tibial side and the femoral side at the same time. The tibial side is more important to fix than the femoral side. And we always fix the femoral side, and we don't even probe and look at the tibial side most of the time. It's hard to fix the tibial side with
All right, wait, we got
don't
this.
I could go nuts. But anyway.
No, I know. No, this is awesome. But listen, my mother Judy is listening, so
Yeah, yeah.
we have a lot of non-orthopedic surgeon listeners. So let's roll the bean footage backwards just for a second. So MoxyMed makes this thing now called the Misha implant, which, believe it or not, for our listeners, is a shock absorber for the knee. I swear to God, that's what it is. We bolt it in on both sides, and there's a shock absorber. So when you're walking, the shock absorber takes the pressure instead. So it's super cool. It's now FDA approved in
On the mountain
April. And
bike,
it's a,
the
yes,
piston on the front of the
the
mountain bike.
piston on the mountain bike.
The
Exactly.
shock absorber.
All right. So, and this is great. So this is, I feel like it's, Steve Jobs, and it's like we're talking like, the Techno World up there in San Francisco and Stanford. But, that's the sort of world out there, and you're getting connected with great people. These connections lead you to relationships with other people, get you in front of the VCs. Now you've got money, which is great. Now you're searching out a CEO. You're going to have to give the CEO some options too. So now you're giving up a little bit more equity, and the goal is, right, you don't want to keep a lot and have a company that's worth nothing, but you also want to keep as much as you can. So when you do exit, you still have enough that was worthwhile for doing all of this. So
Yeah.
keep going.
So look, it's hard to step into different roles. And what I've learned, and we can come to the new company later, but that you don't know what you don't know, and you're not good at everything. And I don't care who you are, that is going to hold true. But it takes a little while, especially for a young, arrogant orthopedic surgeon, to become aware of themselves and to realize that may be the case. But we do bring in a CEO, and we hire Salesforce before it's easy to use. Spend a lot of money is the point. Okay, it's still not easy to use.
So
Right?
your burn rate's going quickly at this point. You're rolling through the cash, and you're still ways away from a commercial product that you can put into somebody's knee.
Well, it gets FDA approval in 2012 on a 510(k). Anyway, the point of the story is it does end up with an exit to Smith and Nephew in 2019. We do not get mass adoption because it's hard to use, and surgeons don't like to arthroscopically knot tie. And there's no payments. Like the reimbursement codes for meniscus repair are tiny. And that's because it didn't used to work. And it used to be very fast. You'd throw in these things called FASTICs, right? And so Medicare was just like, forget it, we're going to lower reimbursement. So now we're in a situation where it's hard to do a repair. Every single tear should be repaired. Hard to do, though, and doesn't pay well. So the surgeons aren't putting the time in to really train up on this stuff. But these complex tears can heal. Anyway, I'll stop on that. But anyway, yeah, ask me another question so I don't go down that road.
So Nick Kolovas is so happy to hear this. A Stanford sports medicine guy. He's become like the meniscal repair whisperer, like you are. He's just always preaching about
early supporter of Zeterix very early on.
very early on. I'm sure, exactly. And so So it's interesting. So I'm sure when you exited, and Smith and Nephew bought you for a sizable sum, right? And you know, it's a deep sigh of relief, right? You've got this thing, this baby for 10 years you've been working on, and you finally get to a point, you get some money out, but I'm sure you have to meet certain metrics moving forwards to have, you know, additional payments. And was that a concern? That's sort of what you were describing?
You know, there was an article in Forbes about me, and it makes it sound like I like made all 105 million. Listen, there's an earnout. I had invested a lot of money into Series B, and there were liquidation preferences, and the CEO had raised so much money that no, I did not do well on that exit. Okay. Not even a little bit well. Okay.
Well,
Now,
that's this is amazing. I'm just like love. I feel badly for you, but I want to hear this story. It's important.
and this company absorbed my life for a while. I was so excited about it, and it had so much potential to be so much bigger than it actually was. And then the exit he sprinted towards was as fast as possible towards Smith and Nephew, and didn't want to cannibalize what people want to fix, which is the peripheral vertical. Anyway, it's a long story, but not every single venture works out. And what you do is you take those what you've learned from it, and you can make the next thing even more impactful. And it's okay. Like not to mention, I have a practice now where all I do is meniscus repair, and people are flying in from Hong Kong and the Netherlands and Iceland to have their meniscus repaired. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't start this thing and practice it so much that it's like an extension of my arm, right? So listen, there's lots of ways to go, but everything's not going to be successful. The next company I started is way more exciting even than Soterix was.
OutcomeMD, talk to us. What's it about?
So you know how doctors of all specialties do a physical exam, and a lot of them use a stethoscope, right? To assess a patient, right? Maybe we do imaging, another doctor will do lab values, but everyone's assessed somehow before you come up with a treatment. The crazy thing is we all doctors in medicine just about don't measure patients' symptoms and quality of life before we treat them. Orthopedics is actually way more advanced than every other specialty, okay? And that's only because Medicare requires it for hip and knee replacements. Otherwise, we wouldn't be, right? Unfortunately, this is the reality. But measuring the patient's symptoms and quality of life informs decisions from day one, and then keeping track of how they change over time informs decisions over time. And then that data combined with structured data around confounding factors like adverse life events and stresses, new injuries, these kinds of things, and electronic medical record data fed into a little bit of AI, and you literally cure disease. The missing piece in the healthcare puzzle is a data gap that is patient-reported outcomes, which are how have their symptoms and quality of life changed over time, and their confounding factors. If I replace your right hip and 6 months later you break your right ankle, your pain is up and your function is down, and it looks like I did a bad hip replacement. So I don't want you tracking outcomes, right? We've addressed all of these concerns. Patient compliance, like everything is considered here. Plus, it's integrated with the medical record. You pull in all that data. And now decision support tools of the future, we're going to be able to say, what's the best drug for this type of patient with this phenotype, right? And you're going to be able to do, as a doctor, an instant prospective multi-center clinical trial on patients similar to the one sitting in front of you, phenotypically similar. 35-year-old Asian female with this problem, you know, and this medical history. And then from using de-identified data all over the world brought together, instantly see which drug is the right drug, which procedure is the right procedure, which technique is the right technique. We can find
So surgical outcomes as well as, you know, pharmaceutical, medical as well. So the whole gamut of across healthcare.
it works across every specialty. You know, when you talk about entrepreneurship, so now I'm going to step into like doing software engineering, right? Which is crazy. I had watched with Soterix, we did a multi-center study on horizontal cleavage tears, and we used the IKDC, and I really learned like how hard it is to pull this off with PROs. IKDC is a PRO for knee surgery for knee replacement.
Patient reported outcomes for our listeners. It's okay.
Yeah.
You're good. Keep going.
And then I also was consulting for MD Insider, which was a company in Santa Monica that mined data like infection rates, rehospitalization rates, length of stay, number of procedures done, and fed that data back to self-funded employers, these big companies that fund the insurance of their own employees. The CEO, this guy David Norris, was like, "Hey, is there any other way we can find outcomes?" I'm like, "Do it the way the medical literature does it." I suggest it. He's like, "It's impossible." I start it. He joins the board. We end up raising money from the guy who started TikTok, this guy Farhad Mohit, because part of what we're doing is similar to what he did before TikTok, which was BizRate and Shopzilla. We're helping doctors celebrate their great work and helping them generate business from celebrating their outcomes. And then Steve Jurvetson comes in through a network of mine. Steve Jurvetson was literally one of the very first investors in Tesla, first investors in SpaceX, on the board of both. And he's been
So,
yeah.
so you don't want to let this orthopedic surgical side hustle of yours get in the way of your entrepreneurial, dream. So no, it's all, I mean, I love this. You know, you're a master at this point. You've been through a lot, you've gained a lot of experience, you have amazing relationships that you can leverage at this point right now. And so where is OutcomeMD going at this point? I mean, are you making money? How far along is it? Where are you with the project at this point?
I mean, it's on the market and we're growing, and we have the most exciting things that I can't talk about coming up. I mean, there's some really, really cool stuff coming. And I really think that we work across every medical specialty. Mass adoption of clinical outcome tracking is coming, and it is going to absolutely revolutionize healthcare because we will have the data to inform decisions so that patients get the best treatments the first time, right? And that is a key to value-based care. It's the key to dialing in best practices. And every patient should be enrolled in the clinical study, but the clinical study should be done with a fitness tracker-like experience for the patient, where they're fully brought in to the experience and gamified so that they're enjoying it. And so that it's like, and so that they're connected to their doctor as a team with a unified goal of obtaining a good outcome, near term and long term.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating. As surgeons, we've been taught you walk into a room, that patient's there to see you. Most of us use our experience, our clinical, or our experience-based medicine, some literature type stuff as well. Okay, you've got a rotator cuff there. I'm going to fix your rotator cuff and we're going to move on. But, to have the ability to sort of gather information from so many doctors with so many patients using AI, this is a beautiful example of how AI is going to help humanity, allows us to bring everything together to make great decisions. So kudos to you. This sounds like a really high level, awesome project for you for sure. Well, look, dude, we're coming to a close. This has been amazing. We talked about, we know you're fond of actresses. I know you're in a new relationship with Sofia Vergara. So, I want to thank you because you've really raised the bar for orthopedic surgeons, sports medicine. There's no way she was going to go for like a total joint, blue sport coat guy or one of those uptight spine guys. Clearly, we're the coolest dudes around. So I really hope that relationship is working out well for you in the crazy world of Hollywood for sure.
Thank you, man. Sometimes I worry about orthopedic surgeons looking in at me and with, first I'm like, hey, repair the meniscus. And the natural instinct is to not repair the meniscus because that's how we've been trained. Just take it out. And only on the ones that you cherry pick, you'll fix with old techniques, right? And here's a hard to use device and you're not going to get paid well, but let me show that it's the right thing to do, right? So that already orthopedic surgeons are a little bit down on me. Then I'm like, hey, you should track your outcomes. And they're like, oh, that's extra work. Like, I don't track my outcomes. Now we've figured out a way for it to happen in the background and all this stuff. But it's like, that's also maybe a little bit annoying. And then news comes out that I'm with Sophia. So, I'm hoping that people aren't mad at me and like, in the end, we're just one big happy orthopedic family.
No, I love it, brother. That was a great summation of your orthopedic career to your current moments as to where you are right now. Look, as a fan, a junkie of orthopreneurs and entrepreneurs, I'm very proud of you for all that you have accomplished and what you've sort of really gone against the grain, which has always been a passion of mine as well, to do what's right for the patient, even though so many people may be telling you it's the wrong thing to do. Your successes over failures and continuing to move along and to really have really contributed so much and really now stepping outside of what may be an orthopedic surgeon's comfort zone to really help many, many specialties. What a pleasure it has been to have you on the show, Justin.
Yeah, thanks so much, and same to you. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. So happy to have had you. This is Dr. Scott Sigman, hashtag follow the fro, host of the Ortho Show. Till next time.
Thank you.